Throughout history, humanity has always searched for signs of what comes next. In moments of uncertainty, people look backward, not forward, hoping the past left clues about the future. Certain names continue to surface whenever this search begins. Nostradamus, Edgar Cayce, Vanga. These figures lived in different centuries, spoke different languages, and experienced completely different worlds. Yet despite these differences, something unsettling happens when their words are examined through a modern lens. When analysts, historians, and researchers revisit their visions, one specific period begins to stand out: the year 2026. Not because it is marked by a single dramatic prediction, but because recurring signs seem to gather around it. Signs of transition, signs of instability, signs suggesting that humanity approaches a moment where long-standing systems begin to shift. These figures did not speak in the same way, nor did they describe the future with precision. Instead, they warned of patterns, moments when accumulated choices, pressures, and imbalances finally surface. What makes this disturbing is not the idea of catastrophe, but the repetition of the same themes across centuries. When different voices, separated by time, begin pointing towards similar warnings, it raises an uncomfortable question. Why does 2026 keep appearing when these visions are studied together? In a world driven by data, algorithms, and constant updates, it may seem strange that names from the past still influence conversations about the future. Yet Vanga, Nostradamus, and Edgar Cayce continue to be studied, debated, and referenced across cultures. This is not because they predicted specific dates with accuracy, but because their ideas revolve around patterns rather than events. They spoke about cycles, transitions, and moments when humanity faces the consequences of its own direction. Nostradamus used symbolism to describe recurring phases of conflict and renewal. His writings were never meant to be read as timelines, but as reflections of how societies rise, fracture, and rebuild. Vanga's legacy persists largely through interpretations passed down over time. Her name remains linked to periods of upheaval, not because of precise forecasts, but because her attributed visions emphasize instability before transformation. Edgar Cayce approached the future differently. His readings focused on human responsibility, suggesting that outcomes change depending on collective choices rather than fate alone. What connects these figures is not accuracy in prediction, but relevance in interpretation. Each offers a lens through which people try to understand moments of uncertainty, and when multiple interpretations drawn from different eras begin pointing toward the same period, it invites a deeper examination of what that convergence might represent. Before we continue, subscribe for more content like this. Like the video and save it if these signs speak to you. When Vanga's name is mentioned, dramatic headlines often dominate the conversation. Stories of disasters, wars, and sudden collapse tend to overshadow the deeper interpretations associated with her visions. However, those who analyze the material attributed to her more carefully notice a recurring theme. Rather than focusing on single catastrophic moments, her visions are often described as periods of growing instability, times when pressure builds quietly before becoming impossible to ignore. Interpretations linked to the mid-2020s frequently describe social tension reaching critical levels, not through one defining event, but through a combination of environmental stress, political uncertainty, and shifting global power. Another recurring element connected to her legacy is imbalance, a sense that systems designed to maintain order begin to strain under their own weight. Economies fluctuate unpredictably, Institutions lose public trust. Communication becomes more polarized. Importantly, these interpretations rarely suggest an unavoidable fate. Instead, they emphasize warning, signals meant to alert humanity to the consequences of unresolved problems and delayed action. In this context, 2026 is not portrayed as an endpoint, but as a threshold, a moment when long-developing tensions become visible to everyone, whether acknowledged or not. This portrayal of instability does not stand alone. When placed alongside other historical perspectives, it begins to align with broader patterns described by different voices across time. Unlike modern commentators, Nostradamus did not speak in direct statements or clear timelines. His writings were intentionally symbolic, designed to describe patterns rather than precise outcomes. Many of his quatrains refer to moments when long-standing structures weaken gradually, not through sudden destruction, but through internal erosion. Power shifts quietly, authority becomes contested. Systems that once seemed stable begin to fracture from within. Analysts who study these writings often emphasize that Nostradamus described history as cyclical. Periods of growth are followed by stagnation, and stagnation eventually gives way to transformation. These transitions are rarely peaceful, but they are also not final endings. When interpretations associated with the mid-2020s are examined, a familiar theme emerges. Conflict does not arrive unexpectedly. Instead, it grows from unresolved tensions, repeated mistakes, and the refusal to adapt to changing conditions. Another recurring idea in his work is confusion, times when truth becomes difficult to distinguish from illusion, and leadership struggles to maintain legitimacy. Communication breaks down, and societies become divided in how they perceive reality itself. In this framework, 2026 is often viewed not as a year of sudden collapse, but as part of a broader cycle, a phase where instability signals the end of one era and the uncertain beginning of another. When compared with other perspectives, this cyclical view strengthens the impression that certain warning signs tend to appear before major historical shifts take place. Edgar Cayce approached the future from a fundamentally different perspective. Rather than describing fixed outcomes, his readings emphasize potential paths shaped by human behavior and collective decision-making. According to interpretations of his work, the future was never set in stone. Events unfolded based on how societies responded to technological growth, environmental responsibility, and ethical challenges. One of the most consistent themes linked to Cayce's readings is acceleration. As technology advances faster than moral reflection, imbalances emerge. Progress continues, but wisdom struggles to keep pace. In discussions associated with the coming decades, Cayce is often connected to moments when humanity faces crossroads, points where choices either stabilize existing systems or push them toward deeper instability. Unlike apocalyptic interpretations, his perspective suggests accountability rather than inevitability. The warning is not about destruction, but about consequence. Actions taken years earlier begin to reveal their long-term effects. Within this framework, the mid-2020s are sometimes viewed as a period where accumulated decisions converge. Environmental strain, technological dependence, and social division intersect in ways that demand conscious response. When placed beside other historical voices, Cayce's emphasis on choice reinforces a powerful idea: that warning signs exist not to predict collapse, but to offer an opportunity for correction. When these three perspectives are examined together, a striking pattern begins to emerge. Baba Vanga speaks of instability. Nostradamus describes cycles of erosion and transition. Edgar Cayce emphasizes consequence and choice. Individually, these ideas could apply to many periods in history, but when layered on top of one another, they begin to cluster around the same time frame. A period marked not by a single defining event, but by accumulated pressure reaching visible levels. What makes 2026 stand out is not prophecy, but convergence. Social tension, environmental strain, and rapid technological expansion are no longer isolated issues. They intersect, amplifying one another in ways that reshape societies. Another shared element is acceleration. Changes that once unfolded over generations now happen within years. Decisions ripple outward faster, and the margin for correction becomes smaller. None of these perspectives suggest sudden annihilation. Instead, they point toward exposure, a moment when systems reveal their weaknesses and humanity is forced to confront the results of long-standing patterns. This convergence transforms 2026 into a symbolic threshold, not an end, but a turning point. A year where warning signs become difficult to dismiss, regardless of belief and prophecy. It is this overlap of themes echoed across centuries that makes the period feel unsettling. Not because of fear, but because recognition often comes only when change is already underway. Perhaps these signs are nothing more than coincidences, interpretations shaped by fear, curiosity, or the human tendency to search for meaning in uncertain times. Or perhaps history leaves patterns long before major transitions occur. Signals that become visible only when different voices, separated by centuries, begin pointing in the same direction. What makes 2026 unsettling is not a prediction, but a repetition. Instability before transformation, choice before consequence, acceleration before awareness. These perspectives do not tell us what will happen. They ask something far more difficult: how humanity will respond when warning signs are no longer subtle. Will these signals be dismissed as coincidence or recognized as an opportunity to change course? The future may not be written, but the signs, whether symbolic or real, are already being discussed. And the real question is not whether these visions were right, but whether we recognize the moment when history quietly begins to shift.